Do you hate anyone more than you hate Donald Trump?
No.
Why do you hate him so much?
Well, he's a liar and a fraud and a fake. And if you grew up in New York, you knew that. You know, he never could get on the Forbes richest men in the world list because they couldn't quantify his income because he's such a liar. And then Mark Burnett gives him this whole entire show and sold it as truth when it was fiction. And America believed.
Rosie O'Donnell didn't just roast Donald Trump, she took his entire political existence, dipped it in sarcasm, and set it ablaze. Her demolition was so sharp it made every late-night monologue look like polite applause. It wasn't rage, it was performance art, the kind that turns arrogance into punchlines and delusion into theater. Rosie didn't need a stage because Trump himself provided one, the Oval Office wrapped in gold curtains and daily material for ridicule.
We also have the pinnacle of that, I suppose, when a failed property developer, failed casino owner, reality TV star on The Apprentice becomes the president.
Unreal. And for me, you know, in 2006, when he was just a embarrassment in New York, nobody respected him in any way. Forbes never would put him on the richest people list because they couldn't verify his income because he was often broke. He's a con man, period. And if you...
She began her takedown where Trump hurts most, the myth of his genius. Because nothing bruises a man like Trump faster than the idea he isn't the smartest person in the room. Rosie tore through that illusion like one of his university degrees shiny on paper, empty inside. She compared his leadership to a blooper reel mistaken for a documentary, reminding everyone that behind the chin-lifted confidence was a man terrified of losing admiration.
Donald Trump famously has lots of nicknames for people. I mean, he calls, Kim Jong-un the Rocket Man, for example. He fancies himself as a chance for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Which is delusional and probably frontal temporal lobe dementia.
What nickname would you give him?
Delusional Don.
I thought it might be something more imaginative than that.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's so many that people have done.
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Then came the economy, Trump's favorite trophy. Rose's roast sliced through it with surgical precision. She painted him as the guy who took credit for the sunrise and blamed everyone else when it rained. She joked that under Trump the stock market had more mood swings than a teenager without WIF. While he bragged about record numbers, real Americans juggled 2 jobs and overdue dreams. Success under his rule, she said, looked like Monopoly, except only one player had real money, and it wasn't the people.
It was odd because he had stood her up a few times already, so friends and family weren't thinking he was going to do it this time. But he walked down the aisle in Trump Tower and or wherever it was a Trump building, and he shook hands with all the celebrities who were there. Not me, because I didn't know him. I had never met him. But I was watching a man on his wedding marching to his wife, stopping to shake hands like he was a car salesman.
Rosie didn't stop there. She bulldozed into Trump's foreign policy, the self-declared master negotiator who managed to alienate allies faster than he could spell strategic. His summits, she joked, felt like awkward family reunions where the host didn't realize everyone talked behind his back. His fondness for dictators wasn't diplomacy, it was auditioning for a club no sane leader wanted to join. Every handshake was a meme in the making. Every summit a performance in misplaced confidence.
You know, I had an interaction on television where I talked about him in 2006, and I made fun of his hair and did what comedians have been doing for years. And he went really crazy. He just could not get himself to get over it for over 20 years. And he uses me as a punching line and disparages me and insults me and calls me names like it's a kid in school. And
then came the Rallies, Trump's traveling therapy sessions disguised as politics. Rosie described them as infomercials for one man's ego, complete with grievance chants and zero refunds. The sight of a sitting president treating public service like a stand-up tour was almost beyond parody, but Rosie made it work. She called his speeches improved Gone Feral, a mashup of rants and grammar crimes delivered by a man more afraid of silence than scrutiny.
He has been a mystery to me from the moment I was conscious of him as a young child, when all his planes were getting repossessed off the runways at LaGuardia, when he was trying to sell steaks and cologne. And, because, Warren Buffett always does that, right? All the billionaires do that. No, he's the only one because he's a con man. That's the bottom line.
And he hasn't stopped. I mean, he's still flogging this, that, and the other.
In defiance of the Constitution. He's selling things from the office. He's taking money and gifts from other countries, the emoluments clause. He's breaking every law and every rule that we have in our country, and no one seems to be able to stop.
Rosie also went after Trump's social media addiction. She said if presidential dignity had a grave, his tweets would be dancing on it. His phone wasn't a tool, it was a loaded weapon without a filter. His tantrums turned global diplomacy into a digital circus where leaders woke up to hashtags instead of briefings. Rosie mocked the irony of a man demanding respect while typing like a teenager in a comment war. Then came the pandemic. She tore into his miracle cure fantasies and his obsession with retweets over relief. While Americans counted toilet paper rolls, Trump was counting likes.
And I don't live in fear of what someone's going to say to me in Walmart, even though most people are very kind. The MAGA people, are emboldened by his cruelty to be just as cruel, even to my face. So I knew for my own safety and health that I had to leave. But he hasn't stopped. He just threatened to take away my citizenship a couple of weeks ago in a Truth Social, a misnomer if there ever was one.
Rose's roast then turned philosophical. She said Trump's presidency felt like a beauty pageant where the contestant refused to admit he lost the swimsuit round. Every scandal was persecution, every critic a traitor. The man had more grievances than policies and more slogans than plans. Even his cabinet wasn't spared. Rosie joked that working for Trump was like being on a reality show where everyone gets fired eventually. The turnover rate, she said, made fast food jobs look stable. His version of working class was just wearing a baseball cap in public.
Well, he is a cruel, criminal, and mentally unstable man. And Duty to Warn was a book that came out when he was first in office. Psychiatrists across the country who don't ever really diagnose people that they don't serve personally came together and made a book, Duty to Warn, to tell the world what a narcissistic, mentally ill person he is.
Then came the media Rose's old battlefield. The man who once thrived on attention now condemned it like a bitter ex. Rosie laughed at how Trump called the press dishonest while begging for its spotlight. His feud with journalists wasn't about truth but control. He doesn't hate fake news, Rosie said. He just hates news he didn't fake first. When legal troubles hit, she called his scandals sequels in a franchise that refuses to end. Each case was another episode, new lies, same soundtrack. Even subpoenas became stage props for Trump's endless drama.
The Supreme Court has given him pretty much free rein, and he's breaking all kinds of laws as he sits there and continues the grift of selling things from the White House. It's kind of unbelievable.
It's incredible.
Taking gifts from other countries. And so it's worked out better for me to be away,
and
I'm very grateful.
A happier version of yourself where you are certainly at the moment, Rosie.
Yes,
Rosie then tore into his habit of rewriting history. Every failure became a
Rosie then shredded Trump's habit of rewriting history. Every failure became a misunderstood success. She joked that he viewed reality like an Etch-a-Sketch, shake it and the mistakes disappear. Unfortunately for him, everyone else was watching in HD. His climate denial, she said, felt like a bad sitcom rerun. The planet burned while Trump questioned thermometers. He didn't unite the country. He split it into memes. Patriotism, Rosie said, became about applause, volume, the flag as prop, not principle.
Stephen Colbert, what was your reaction to that?
I was shocked. I really was. But this is what an authoritarian government does. This is what they do. They try to silence the artists. They try to silence the truth tellers. They took all of these amazing pundits off the television, Terry Moran, Jim Acosta. And, once ABC and CBS gave in to the bribery, gave in to the blackmail that Trump threatened them with lawsuits that were bogus, and they gave him millions of dollars. As soon as that happened, they're done as a media company.
Rosie also roasted Trump's obsession with crowd sizes and TV ratings, the strangest insecurity ever shown by a world leader. She painted him scrolling through numbers at midnight, desperate for proof he was still adored. His ego, she joked, required daily feeding like a mythical beast. Campaigns under Trump, she said, weren't movements, they were malls. Every promise came with merch. Every policy a slogan with a price tag. His presidency was less democracy, more infomercial with delusions of grandeur.
And I think he's the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. And his cruelty knows no bounds. And when he is upset and humiliated and embarrassed, he has no control and he goes ape shit. Can I say that? And, he is the kind of person that is a grifter. And he is an evangelical preacher to people who believed that Celebrity Apprentice was true. And Celebrity Apprentice was not true. And Mark Burnett has tapes of him calling.
Even Trump's victim complex became comedy gold. Rosie called him the world's richest underdog, a man with money, power, and influence, still convinced the universe was out to get him. Every failure was sabotage, every setback a plot. Then she hit where it hurt most: his legacy. Rosie said history doesn't take bribes and time doesn't sign NDAs. His presidency, she said, would be remembered not for achievements but for audacity, the era where exaggeration replaced expertise. The man who wanted to be a legend became a spectacle.
In case people don't know, there was basically a proposed merger, really, involving Paramount, the parent company of CBS.
Yes.
Anyway, long story short, Trump went to sue CBS, isn't that right?
Yes, because of an interview on 60 Minutes where he didn't like the way he was edited or that Kamala Harris was edited.
So even though the legal team thought he'd win, they still paid out the $16 million, and Stephen Colbert basically said it was a bribe.
Which it was.
Yeah.
And
3 days later.
Yes, because that's what he has the power now to demand that people lose their jobs, to call out private citizens like myself or like Bruce Springsteen, who spoke out very eloquently about him as well. And this is what they do. They try to silence people and they put the fear of God in everyone that they're going to lose their jobs.
In the end, Rosie O'Donnell's roast wasn't just comedy, it was clarity. She didn't yell. She didn't preach. She laughed, and that laughter told the truth louder than any speech. Because Trump's greatest weakness was never his critics. It was his inability to laugh at himself. Rosie simply did it for him, louder, sharper, and with punchlines history won't forget. As Trump keeps basking in his myth, Rosie's words echo louder with every scandal. His empire of ego is crumbling, and she just added the soundtrack. Sometimes the only way to tell the truth about power is to laugh it into submission.